on the topic of current practices and emerging trends in structural engineering. We'll go with a brief outline. I will just highlight some industry outlook features. Then we will move on to typical day in the life of a structural engineer. We'll move then to a bit of basics in structural mechanics. Then we'll look on to the few challenges which we face in the structural engineering domain. Next to the use of all the attendees is the skill sets which needs to be required to become a structural engineer. What are their career opportunities and then their future challenges. So this all in all will give you an outlook of how the industry operates, what are opportunities for a structural engineer, and how can you become a one good structural engineer in yourself. So just sit back and relax and see how well can you be placed in this industry. So moving next, to give you a brief, India being a developing economy and infrastructure being a foremost sector contributing to its growth, the industry outlook is quite engrossing. So looking at few facts and figures, we have national infrastructure plan which is in place, which is going to allocate 100 lakh crores of spending in next 5 years. And to give a brief distribution of how this 100 lakh crores is going to be spent, the major pie of one fourth is going to the energy sector. Next segment would be the road infrastructure. The 16% lies to the urban infrastructure, and the minor part goes to the ports and airports. So you will be engrossed that does structural engineer involve in all these sectors? The answer is yes. We are involved in each and every segment of this, and hence I would say the outlook is quite engrossing. A few other schemes launched by Government of India includes affordable rental housing. You'd already heard about smart cities project. So we have already identified 100 smart cities to be coming up in next 5 years. Also, with the introduction of Real Estate Regulation and Development Act (RERA), that has brought a lot of transparency into this sector, and that transparency has been quite instrumental to the consumers, and that has brought in a lot of trust within the consumers in the developers. So all in all, I would say industry outlook is quite great, and this sector seems to be a one which is going to have some boom period in next few years. So moving to our field, which is structural engineering, it's a part within civil engineering. Few of the people say it's a science, few say it's an art. I would say it is a mixture of both. You need to be good at science. You should have a creativity in yourself, and that both the qualities would make you a good structural engineer. So what's the role of an engineer is to make stable, economical, and elegant framework. So all three elements being important, none can be compromised with respect to other. So the framework of what? So the framework should resist the forces of nature, be like wind forces, water forces, maybe in terms of earthquake forces, the gravity in itself. So these are the forces which needs to be resisted by that framework. And not only that, it should be fit for purpose. Just that you make it is not a good enough, it should be fit for its use. It should be an optimized structure, not a very conservative structure which would not be helpful to anybody. And it's not just a solution in terms of drawings. The next step comes to execute that, to transform those drawings into reality. So that's also a challenge for the structural engineers. Better quality, and thereby overall safe and sustainable build environment. So by all this, we ensure that our habitat is quite safe and sustainable, and that's the key priority or the key challenge for a structural engineer. So just you may ask, where lies the scope of a structural engineer? To show you a quick brief, to get you know that where all we can act, just share few of the examples which I have and I have worked on itself. So the first area or the segment, you may say it is as a skyscrapers. You already have seen. So these are the few examples of the skyscrapers across the world. Burj Khalifa, you already know that's an 828-meter tall building. Again, Park Avenue from US as the most slender building in the world. And the Taipei 101, again the building which can be located at the most challenging location at anywhere in the earth, on the earth basically, considering it has a lot many earthquakes, cyclones, typhoons over there. So all these three buildings can be a good example of where the structural engineer can showcase his skills basically. Moving on to the next segment is the commercial segment, where we have some luxurious projects, the Claridge in India, the Taj Hotel, Burj Al Arab, a 7-star hotel. So all this has been designed by a structural engineer. It definitely requires a good skill of structural engineering in designing such a luxurious buildings. This is also one of our aspects. The next one will be the bridges. Again, a key aspect which you see every day, the long span bridges. We have Havra Bridge in India, the Golden Gate Bridge, and the Akashi Kaikyo Japan. The Akashi Kaikyo Japan, I would like to highlight, is the longest suspension bridge. Maybe the span between these two piers would be near about to 2 kilometers. So 2 kilometers without any supporting column, you can assume that how huge this is. So these are all the projects where structural engineers can showcase their talent. The next is the power sector, the aviation sector, the marine sector. So just to give you a quick highlight, KJ Basin, which is there in India, operated by the Reliance. It's again designed by a structural engineer, wherein already assume that there will be a lot of challenging work considering wind and water dynamics involved. So there will be fluid dynamics involved in it. Next is Bengaluru Airport, is again a challenging structure in itself. Also the nuclear power plants. So we also design nuclear power plants. So all in all, you can say these are all the brief sectors wherein we can be involved, and there are quite a vast range of sectors basically. So if I can brief out what are the key specialities within the structural engineering domain, so they can be bridge design, tunnel design, hydraulic design, marine engineering, wind engineering, earthquake engineering, and blast resistant design. Now you may ask that we don't have any such special course on blast design or maybe hydraulic engineering or a tunnel design, but this design or this sectors can be only worked on once you have a good exposure into the field. Once you get a job, you work in this era, and then you can develop the expertise within these domains. So these are the key domains where the expertise lies in. So it's not only getting to the structural engineering, it has itself in it many domains where we can specialize our skills into. So you may ask, like, who are the prominent personalities? We never heard of a structural engineer in our day-to-day life. So I would just highlight few of them. Gustav Eiffel. I hope you would have heard his name. He's a structural engineer behind Eiffel Tower. The next one comes to my mind is Fazlur Rahman Khan. Again, he is a father of tubular design for the high-rise buildings. Comes from Bangladesh and has a huge name in the field of structural engineering. And his work is quite amazing and has been applauded over the world. Lean Biddle is an expert on tall buildings. Again, you would have heard about Fresinet systems. That's a pre-stressed concrete systems. He was the one who developed them. Next comes to my mind is William Baker, who was a structural engineer for Burj Khalifa. Leslie E. Robertson, the person behind the construction of the Twin Towers in US, which unfortunately got collapsed due to tragic event on 9/11. So these are all personalities, prominent personalities. You can be one of them if you have a patience and continuous, if you make continuous efforts for long years. So these people have the best among the best just by doing some course, or you need to get upskill yourself as and when the time comes. So just to highlight you what's a typical day for us, what we do. So first of all, we try to make a framework of structures from the projects we get from our clients. We try to make a framework. So it's to design those forces. Then we do a lot of multidisciplinary coordination. This involves like geotechnical, involves MEP from electrical, mechanical, from the landscape consultant to each and every light or the bulb which has been installed in the facility which you are designing. So there involves a lot of multidisciplinary coordination in a project which needs to be done. Then after this coordination is done, after the analysis is done, what at the end of the day, what we do, we just draft those structural drawings. So these are the drawings on which the structure is going to be built. So these are the key aspects. So just not to the drawings, not restricting ourselves to the drawings. The next thing is the planning and the scheduling of the project. That also is involved in the scope, construction of it. And then comes the business development aspect. As you go in many years of exposure, you go for the business development roles as well. So just to touch a brief upon the basics, quite basics, nothing much of technical involved, but this would be quite great to have a overall brief. So this is the gravity load path. So first of all, the first force which a structure needs to resist is its own weight, right? So On your left side of your screen, if you can see the gravity load part for the buildings, and on the right you can see the gravity load part for the bridges. So to quickly highlight the load path is something like you have the structural slabs or the floors which you say, on which you are right now sitting and performing your work. So this is a structural slab. From the slab, the load gets transferred to the columns. The columns may be there if it is a frame structure. If it's not there, it will be a brick wall or load bearing wall. So it will transfer to that wall. Then that column might be supported on a pile cap, and there might be a foundation below it. That foundation may be transferring that load to the soil basically. So everything which is there needs to be get transferred to the soil, right? So here we have an example of a pile foundation where the load is getting transferred through the pile, or else in case if we have some footing, that footing is supported on the soil, then the load gets distributed to the soil via footing. So this is a pressure bulb of how the pressure distribution take place within the soil, if you can see over here. Similarly, we have the same load path bridges wherein the pedestrian load gets transferred to the bridge deck. Then there is a supporting truss frame which supports that load, and that truss frame is indirectly supported on the columns. Again, those columns have a foundation system, maybe a pier or pile cap or a footing on which it is resting. So this is a basic load path for the gravity. Now the first force is this gravity force. So you may say this is quite simple, right? So is this the only force which we are restricting up to? We do have to consider, okay, I'll just show you one more for the bridges as well. So these are for the suspension bridges, and this is for the cable stayed bridges. So the load transfer is slightly different in both the bridge type, wherein if you see the suspension bridge, deck load is supported on this tie cables, and this tie cables are going back to the pylons, the vertical elements you can see over here. This vertical elements would then transfer the load back to the foundation, and this is how the load transfer take place. While in the cable state, if you can see, it's directly getting transferred from the deck to the pylon. Rather in the suspension bridge, it was from the deck to this tie cables and to the main suspension cable. So this is the difference between these two bridge systems. So depending on the spans which we have, we select a suitable bridge type. Coming to the fact that the gravity is not the only load, we do have lateral loads involved, lateral in terms of wind and seismic. Now you may ask that both are lateral loads, so would they act in similar manner? No, definitely not. The occurrence of the wind and the application of wind load is quite different to what seismic load is. Seismic is through an earthquake, when an earthquake triggers below your house or something. So to just brief you regarding the wind loads, so wind loads are directly depending on the wind speed and the terrain, and depending on the geometry of the structure. And as we go tall, the wind force keeps on increasing. So you may see that when your structure goes to about 1 kilometer or 900 meters, you have significant wind load to resist. Now the same phenomenon doesn't occurs with the seismic load. So it doesn't mean that if you build tall, the seismic force keeps on increasing. The seismic force is a different force. It's a force due to virtue of its own inertia or its own weight. So you may say like when somebody pushes, you displaces yourself, right? So similar to that, when somebody pushes the building, and that's in our case is an earthquake, there is some force due to the inertia. That's why force is quite different in the seismic than compared to the wind. Where in the seismic, it is more depending on the mass of the structure and not the orientation of the structure or the height of the structure, but rather the mass of the structure is critical. And both these lateral loads need a different way of structural framing and how we can resist them. So I will just show you a few of the slides wherein I hope you can see the video, wherein these are the few excitations due to the wind. So it's a swimming pool on a high rise building. You can see how large the vibrations could be if you are at 800 meters or 900 meters. So it's not possible to go so tall, again considering the wind keeps on increasing, and these are all not fit for the purpose, right? Structural structure, it doesn't makes the purpose fulfill if you're going so tall and building a swimming pool at the top of the high rise building. Or else if you see the arch bridge, it is just resonating slightly with the wind frequency. So these are the few examples of the wind vibration. One more challenge which we face while designing for the wind is the vortex shedding phenomenon. So I'm not sure you could have come across. As usually what we think is, if the wind is coming from the X direction, it's coming from west to east, so we always assume that the structure would also displace from west to east, but it doesn't happen under certain circumstances. What happens is when the wind is flowing from west to east, it's a direction which is shown here, the structure tends to vibrate perpendicular to the wind. So this is what the vortex shedding phenomenon is about. So if you see over here in the below video, you can see there are some vortices formed just after the wind is passed from the structure. Basically, this is a structure, circular structure. And once the wind passes through it, you can see the vortexes are formed. Now, these vortexes are the reason why there is a displacement or a vibration in the perpendicular direction to that of wind. So again, wind is also not a simple force. It involves a lot of complexity. Lot many challenges are also involved in it. Coming back to the seismic part of it, seismic, as I said, it's dependent on the mass. It's again a challenging force. I would show you a quick video in the next slide, wherein you can also see how that is resisted. So basically, for the seismic, we have our philosophy in terms of strong column, wherein what we say is we will have our column stronger and the beams weaker. So when the earthquake comes, there would be slight or the minor damages there in the beams, and this won't be a structural collapse or something, but this will be slight deformation in the beams, or there might be rotations in the beams which may induce some cracking in the beams. But if your beam is getting damaged, that doesn't mean your structure will collapse, right? So our fundamental philosophy in seismic design is your structure should not collapse. Your structure should be stable until you all can vacate outside, right? Your structure may get some damages, that is fine, but it should not get collapsed. But if you allow your strong columns to be very thin, right? In this case, if you can see, if the next on your image on the right, if you can see, the columns are quite thin, the beams are quite strong. Now what will happen, the damage will occur at your column, and if it happens that one of your column gets compromised, and once your system becomes unstable, it tends to collapse. So all in all, the philosophy of seismic design, or you can say earthquake design, is strong column, weak beam, wherein there might be some damages in the local elements, but globally it will be stable. This is just a quick video. I just said that how you have a high earthquake zone and you need to build that building. So what they do is they have some seismic energy dissipation devices. Basically, what they're trying is whatever force the building gets due to its own weight, they are trying to release that energy in terms of some other way. So here, if you can see, there's a tune mass damper, where a damper is there at the top of the story. You can see a huge tune mass ball damper. S- so when a structure tries to move on the left, the damper goes to the right, and thereby the vibrations or the overall structure is kept to be stable. If you can see over here, right, the structure without the damper is still moving, but with the damper it has come to a standstill. So this is a live video of Taipei 101 during an seismic event. A damper is moving, which is moving opposite to the movement of the building, and thereby it is compensating the movement of the building. So this is quite a good example of how we dissipate our energy when the challenges are quite huge in terms of earthquake. The next level is not just, we don't allow like at few structures, like if we have hospitals or if we have a power plant, we don't allow for the damages to occur, because that those are critical structures, right? If your structure is a dam and if you allow cracking or damage in the dam may fail, and that would cause another big event, right? So in those type of structures, there is a performance level determined, and we design according to those performance level. We design such that the dam may not have major cracks, only cracks up to the limit where it doesn't leads to a structural failure, basically. So these are the different levels: the operational level, the immediate occupancy, wherein you can see there are minor damages. To life safety, there may be some major damage, but the structure remains standstill. And in the collapse prevention, there are very major damages, but overall the structural would remain safe until you can vacate that building, basically. So these are the four different levels in earthquake engineering for which we design our structures for. And just to give you a quick brief of the latest trends which we are getting through, this includes like computational design, wherein you can do some challenging structures. You could have already seen few of those structures coming around. These all have been done using the help of computational design softwares. These are like really required when when we address to the complex structures. To learn this computational design approach, you can improve the productivity, your structures become efficient and more optimized. And now you can build a structure of any shape. Now manually it's quite difficult to calculate forces and all for this type of structures which are quite complex in the nature, but using the computational power of our computers we can definitely design those. So that's the next which is coming up in the field of structural engineering, is we do have a lot more computational power, and we are taking the benefits of that to the designing of more complex structures. Your benefit and to your understanding what can be a career progression within the field of structural engineering, may join as a graduate engineer in one of the other firm and then move up the ladder in terms of becoming a senior structural engineer. So this transition usually takes around 4 to 5 years from graduate to senior engineer. Then again 3 or 4 years to principal engineer or a project manager, where you would be yourself handling a project in terms of structural design. You would be the person responsible for management on the site as well, wherein the project is going through the execution phase. Next comes is an associate engineer or a senior project manager, wherein the roles will be more of like an advisory, and you would be a key role, key person for that ongoing project. You need to coordinate with all different disciplines involved in that project, and that's near about to when you complete few of the projects as a principal, then you move up to associate engineer, and then you go up and become a technical director or a project director, where you also move on to more of like business development aspects of the project. You go for the bidding of the stuff and you approach the client, convince him for the projects, deliver a project as a whole. And then these are key progression within a structural engineer's journey. And again, sky's limit. You can also reach up to director levels. You can open your own consultancy firm as well. These are all the opportunities which lies if you have this. And to highlight few of the skills which would be required if you are in this field, then for the analysis and design, there are few softwares which I have highlighted. And if you are prominently looking for jobs in India or in Indian businesses, that's basically we use ETABS, TED Pro, and SAP. These three softwares are prominently used. If you're looking for somewhere in Middle East, they are usually using ETABS, RAM concepts, and sometime in UK they are using Strap and RAM concept both. So these are the key softwares you should look for. And if you want to target Indian, you could target one of the software. I would prefer ETABS as a better platform. That is a platform for where you can model your structure, you can analyze your structure, you can design your structure. Then you need to manually print the drawings as well. If you'd want to do something like parametric design, the one which I was telling, the computational design, so you need to get your hands to Dynamo. Dynamo is a inbuilt tool for Revit, wherein you can automate many of your structures. Grasshopper is one more. Boulant is another. So all these are parallel softwares if you want to do parametric design, and if you are looking for the 3D modeling and drafting. So once you do the analysis in ETABS, what you do is you model that same structure in Revit, because that will help you to prepare the drawings and release the drawings. Now the Revit model is also gets coordinated with other disciplines. Now MEP or architect may be also preparing his own Revit model. So those all things needs to be well coordinated, right? Your Revit model will be coordinated with architect's Revit model and all should match. And in terms, there are a lot of coordination challenges in which needs to be resolved. So Revit is a good platform you can learn. Apart from there is a Rhino and Tekla. Tekla is also very popular in UAE and UK. These are all key drafting and modeling softwares. For the project management, you can move on to MS Projects or Primavera. The programming, you can also learn Python. I would suggest you to learn at least one programming language, and that will be really helpful for your future growth. And Python is one which you can start learning. It's quite a platform where you can grasp quickly, and this is applicable at many other software. So Python can be a good startup. You have few more applications, mobile applications also, where you can install in your mobile and work upon. Autodesk is one where you can view your AutoCAD drawings as well. So these are the key skills. If you would just, I can highlight few. One is ETABS in analysis, Revit in terms of modeling, and if you learn Python, these three skills, at least if you can learn, you can excel in the career of structural engineer. Moving to the next, what can be the future challenges which you may look up to? So now, as you see, every day the structures are going more challenging. Like architects are getting more challenging work, so definitely they want something not a normal structure, they want something out of the box, right? Definitely you also have to cope up with that, and you have to perform some miracles in that terms, that you can see a lot of challenging structures coming up. Also, there are advances in the materials. We are all developed more in the concrete, but definitely there are more different additives within the concrete, as well as a different role as in concrete changing into more of a steel oriented construction, or new materials like nanomaterials also coming up. So there will also be a challenge regarding the advances in the materials. Again, climate change being an important factor, where you can already see a lot of flooding taking place, and few of the times you can also see those flooding is also causing a collapse of the building. So definitely you as a structural engineer should also design your buildings to estimate the forces which are going to come in next few years, or maybe the life next 50 years of the building. Climate change is again a quite important parameter. The next thing is multidisciplinary coordination, with a lot of disciplines involved in the project. Coordinate with each and every discipline and get the best out of it. Computational advances, I already highlighted. Professional accreditation, now this is quite an important aspect, that you should get a registered or a chartered structural engineer, so that your professional exposure or experience is accredited in form that you can sign on the projects which you can deliver. That's quite important. You can take the liabilities of that. The next comes is automation, again more related to the computational aspects. The structural aesthetic is also improving day by day, and that's also a challenging aspect. And the next last thing is structural health monitoring. So this is a recent development within the west regions, wherein they are also monitoring the structure. Like a structural life may be close to from 50 to 100 years, or maybe if it is a dam it goes to 200 or 500 years. But now the continuous monitoring take place within that 50 years time period, that the structure is behaving to the manner in which it was designed for. So all in all, these are the quick challenges which you may face when you go on and become a structural engineer in yourself. So I hope I have given you a brief about how this field is currently placed, how you can grab few skills and then enter into the market. If you enter in the market, what are the career progression roles for you? If you want to excel at this career, these are the future challenges which you should be addressing or thinking about right now, about how to build upon those.